deal with it on a daily basis. Especially, if you have like, two people who own a property together and they're living on that property, these questions are applicable. So let's start. People who live in a mavoi. A mavoi is an alleyway. So you have like apartments that open up to a alley. As we said earlier, there's two types of alleys. There's an alley which is open on both sides, and there's an alley which is open on one side. Now, note, an alley doesn't mean like the alley behind here. Alley has to be walled the whole way. This alley is actually almost walled the whole way. Almost. Okay. People who live around a mavoi. And what they did is they have a partnership in food for business. For example, they buy wine together, or they buy oil together, or they buy honey together. They don't need to make an eruv for Shabbos. They could say like, hey, we're all partners in, and that's actually quite common in like Phoenix. Most families order bulk order, and in order to make the bulk order worth it, you have to get a lot of people to order at the same time. And this is so long as it's one type of thing in one vessel. But if it's many, but let's say we all do an order, we all order different things. So like if we all order a cow together, and then we get it slaughtered and butchered, and we all take parts of that cow, that will include us all kind of in the same family for eiruvin. But let's say I say, hey, I'm ordering from this distributor, and you say, well, I'll take tuna, and you say, I'll take milk, and then that won't count. Okay. So then you need to make a eruv for Shabbos. You need to join in.
This only holds for an alleyway.
This is an alleyway, correct? Someone who is from the alleyway, which asks for his friend wine or oil before Shabbos, and he doesn't give him, right? So now we're not including each other, because we show that we're not all partners in the wine or oil or the product. And someone who does join with other people and he doesn't do it this week, they can go into his house and take it by force. So let's say every week we order together, and that makes us make an eruv, and he says, I'm not joining in. So then you can force him because that's what you decided in the beginning. And someone who doesn't want to do it at all, you can force him. So if we're all joining together to buy something, and we want someone else to join because we want to make an eruv, then we can force that person. It's kind of like a HOA, right? That's kind of like a HOA. In fact, I wonder if a HOA might even include people in eruv potentially. If you're all partial owners of all the grounds. Although it would only help if it was a gated community. And if you have a gated community, potentially you would be able to possibly carry in the gated community. Okay, a courtyard which has two doorways to two alleys. Let's say, so now you want to join an alley partnership. So if you only join, so you have a courtyard and there's an alley, an entrance to an alley on each side. If you want to join in with them, if you join in one, then you can't go into the other one.
Beautiful.
No, I'm listening. It's easier for me to listen.
If you join in one of the alleys, you don't automatically join in the second one, and you can't carry into it. And therefore, if you join into one of the alleys, you have to let the other alley know, by the way, I'm not joining in you. Even though we can typically force the guy to join, here, in this case, he's joining the other one, he doesn't have to join this one. Okay, a lady, the wife of somebody, can do an eruv for her husband, even if he doesn't know. And that's so as long as the husband doesn't say. Now, the husband does have certain rights over his household. He can tell his wife, I forbid you from joining them, right? So let's say he didn't do that, so she can join. However, if he says you can't join them, she can't join them. For example, he says, we're not making an eruv with them, so then she can't make an eruv with them. If the people join of a courtyard, the people of this courtyard join with one of the alleys. If it's with one thing, even if that thing is finished, he can make a shittuf, he can make a partnership with them, and he doesn't need to tell them a second time. But if it's with two things and the food runs out, then they have to add, and they don't have to tell him. And if it ends, so then he has to tell them. So this is basically, you can put these mavlis, these alleys on autopilot. Now, we live in Prescott. Like a lot of these things are hard to imagine. Even in New York, they're hard to imagine. But if you go to Israel, like Jerusalem, you see like all these
Set up
small
that way.
old alleys with apartments opening into them. Like people will enter an alley and then they'll go into. Now, in Jerusalem, there's typically an eruv all around Jerusalem. So basically, there's like a string all around Jerusalem, but a lot of people in Jerusalem don't hold of that eruv and they won't carry in Jerusalem. So what they'll have to do is do it for this alley. Because as I mentioned before, once you're putting an eruv on a city, it's not as simple as people think. It's not as simple as people think that you could just put a string around the city and carry. Okay. Phoenix and Scottsdale actually have two eruvs. And they have like the string going around Phoenix and Scottsdale. They use freeway walls. They designate freeway walls, permission from the city. And then you're allowed to carry on Shabbos. However, in between them, there's a certain area that you're not allowed to carry because they weren't able to extend the eruvs to join them together.
So if you had, I know it's a digression, but if you had this HOA and it was like a gated community, would the whole population have to be Jewish, or could the Jewish people within that gated community consider it an eruv?
So there are different ways. You need to make an eruv. In other words, you need to designate food, which will join everyone together. Now, I don't recall the exact details, but let's say you live in an HOA or you live in an apartment building. So either you could make an eruv with another Jewish person in there, or what you could do is you could go to the president of the HOA and give them a symbolic dollar or give them a symbolic $20 bill and say, here, I'm buying rent of all the public space here. Because technically you do own part of the street in the public space, but I don't know the exact details. It might make a difference if the streets are public streets, like some HOAs in Prescott, the streets are city streets, and some HOAs, the streets are private. Like some HOAs, you can park in a gated community in Prescott and leave your car overnight, and no one can do anything to you. And some HOAs, you can't do that in Prescott, and they'll tow you. So those are all factors in exactly how to do it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, okay, number 7. The courtyard. So a bunch of people live around a courtyard. They're joining with the people living in. They have an opening to an alley, joining people with the alley, and the people in that second alley from another doorway. Then they can go to both of them, and both of them. But however, our courtyard can carry into both of them, but the alleyways cannot carry into the other alleyway. Right? So you have two alleys and a courtyard in the middle. So the courtyard, you do the eruv, you can all carry in there, and then you can join in the partnership in the mavos, in the alleys, but the alley to alley cannot go to each other. Okay. Okay. However, if you don't make an eruv with either of them, then you're forbidden to go to both. If you usually use one doorway, and the second doorway to the other alley isn't used. This one that you usually use is forbidden, and the one that you're not is not forbidden. The eruv with the mavoi, which is you're not used to, is allow itself, and it doesn't. So here's the interesting thing: when you carry frequently, that causes more problems than when you don't carry frequently there. Okay. If you make an eruv with the people of the alleyway, so again, you're in a courtyard in the middle. So imagine you have a courtyard with all these houses around it. And by the way, anywhere in Europe also, you can easily find these examples of courtyards and alleyways and buildings, all these things. So if you have people around a courtyard and they join with people in an alleyway, where they usually enter through there. But the people he doesn't make an eruv with them, and not with the other one that he doesn't use, and he also doesn't make an eruv. Then
The court will form no eruv.
okay, sorry, let me go again. The people of the Mavi, the people of the Mavi make an eruv, which he usually goes through, but he doesn't join the eruv. And he doesn't make the other mavoi, which he doesn't usually, the other alley, which he doesn't go in, and they don't make an eruv. So then what happens is basically he cannot carry through either of them because he didn't join the eruv of the one that made an eruv, and the one that didn't make an eruv, he didn't. Now, again, you can say we're gonna join you into the eruv. You don't have to like necessarily. It's not a. You don't necessarily have to be active. But if you're not active, if they don't have you in mind when they're making eruv, you're not joined in it. All right, we're gonna stop here. It's 10 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, I mean these laws are actually quite strict, but they are only relevant if you have specific type of properties.
In Jerusalem, was this originally in mind when people built? Did people have to go through a certain form of structure to build their home inside the walls, and then figure out this?
So well, some did, some didn't. Probably depends how wealthy you are. Like if you go to New York, you'll go through many driveways, and you'll see a little string going across the driveway and that's an order you can carry outside if the kids want to play outside. Because if it's open to the street, then you can't carry it. You can't carry in it. So there's a lot of different details. You say, oh, it's my property, it's a private domain, I can kick people off, but it doesn't help. It only helps if you have, so.
Seems like this is organizing relationships as much as anything else.
It does
making sure everyone gets taken care of.
It does organize relationships, but it doesn't need to. Yeah. All right, we're going to finish this mimer today.
If you guys will excuse me, I'm not feeling good.
Okay.
Just go home and lie down.
All right, feel good, David.
All right, yeah. Zygazun, they say.
Feel good. When do you travel?
I'm sorry.
Take care.
Yeah.
Feel better.
Oh, thank you.
When do you travel?
I'm leaving Thursday.
Thursday. Cool. All right, yeah. While I'm on YouTube, I just want to mention, so as it turns out, probably the main thing Rosh Hashanah is to hear shofar on Sunday. You don't hear shofar on Shabbos. You're not allowed to hear shofar on Shabbos. So you're supposed to hear it on Sunday, and we'll blow it here in the morning at like probably 12 o'clock. And also, we'll be blowing it at 3:30 at Founding Fathers. If there's one thing you're going to do Rosh Hashanah for over the 2-day period, one mitzvah, it's the shofar that you want to do on Sunday. Yeah. Okay. All right. So we're holding in the mimer. We're in the last paragraph. So we finished off and we said that when Mashiach comes, bad will be totally vanquished, which is symbolic of our emotional and mental structure totally not having any interest in evil and being disgusted by evil. We said nowadays that's usually the service of a complete tzaddik. A complete tzaddik is despised by evil. Most people don't despise bad things, and again, bad things, like I said, doesn't mean evil, doesn't mean Osama bin Laden or terrorism. Evil means non-godly, self-servant things. So nowadays, almost nobody despises and is disgusted naturally, and it doesn't like evil. But a tzaddik is. And we said when Mashiach comes, and why is he? Because he loves God so much. He doesn't care about anything else but God. So because he doesn't care about anything else but God, right? Because he doesn't care about anything else but God, so therefore anything which is not godly, he doesn't like, right?
Well, but isn't everything godly?
Everything's godly, but not all of us realize it, and not all of us see it. And we don't usually, a lot of our life, we don't live with that, right? We naturally don't live with that. So a tzaddik is someone who has such a love to God, he's so conscious to God that God is always the first priority on his head. And therefore, he never, ever has any attraction to evil. In fact, he despises it. So when Mashiach comes, God will be so revealed and manifested so deeply and strongly that we'll have no other interest. There'll be no evil anymore. There won't be any evil. Evil will be like off the chart. And so we said, how do we bring that? The Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, the way you bring Mashiach is, Mashiach's coming is dependent on our service of service of God. And therefore, if Mashiach will have the service that will hate bad and will be despised by bad, naturally, so we have to work on that now. So how do we do that now? So even though we are not even the Beinoni concept, in a Tanya perspective, most of us are considered wicked, in other words, and we're not even in control, whatever. We work really hard not to be. Nevertheless, we all have times when we are, or mitzvahs, or times where we don't struggle with those things, and therefore you got to use those out and give yourself over to them in totality. And then when you do that, you connect to God beyond any measure, when you have those mitzvah opportunities, and that helps you transform yourself, and that creates in the world that evil should actually totally cease to exist, and death should totally cease to exist.
So when Mashiach comes, the individual evil inclination will be defeated?
Correct.
Can't wait for that.
So we won't really have we won't really have free choice about that, which is interesting because we won't really have the struggle of free choice. We will automatically, God will totally manifest it. It'll be like the whole free choice and struggling is all because God is hidden. As we just read in the last week's parsha, actually, God hides himself. But when God is no longer hidden, then there's never a struggle anymore. It's like, a lot of times there's certain mitzvahs we don't want to let go.
But I guess I'm having trouble with the words. This visceral reaction. It's like if we see a hazard, we see a pig. It has some of God's light in it, right? It's got a very thick shell, but it still comes from God.
Right.
So how can we dislike it?
So again, a pig, everything's
It's
created.
example.
Everything's created by God.
Yes.
Right. But some things God is more hidden, and some things God is more revealed.
Yeah.
So pig is a bad example because pig, the rabbis say, will actually become kosher when Mashiach comes.
No, that's good.
Right.
That's why
but,
it is that
but
example.
certain
'cause it's extreme.
certain things we'll look at them, and we'll say, wow, my whole So let's say somebody says, wow, pig comes from God. Let me eat pig nowadays, right? It comes from, I'm eating God. It's just God, right? But God doesn't want you to eat it.
Right.
So the godly energy in it, there's certain things God created because he wanted you to absorb. But there's certain things God created because he wanted you to refrain. So the way you show a pig belongs to God nowadays is by not eating it, right? If you don't eat it, you're making a statement. This isn't for me, this is God's. And that's what God says.
So if we're lucky, we could we'll be able to have a ham sandwich at one
When
point.
Mashiach comes at some point, yeah.
Or you could say
That's
that
so
the-
funny.
It's
Just
very-
even funny to say it, but
Pig
it
has-
makes sense.
A pig has two realities, one before Mashiach and one
One
after.
after.
Well, it's heavily debated. If the Torah says you can only eat an animal which has split hooves and chews its cut. Pigs don't
Right.
chew their cut.
But
So-
it has the split.
So some of the rabbis say pigs will have to change. Their nature will change when Mashiach comes and they'll start chewing their cut. So if you would have ham from before Mashiach coming, then you wouldn't be able to eat it.
Don't put anything in the freezer.
You wouldn't be able to eat it but either way, this is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
God creates everything, but some things he creates for us to absorb and something he creates for us to reject. He
So
creates
it's like a preference. He's kind of guiding us.
whatever he
by
wants
by
with the
those-
Torah. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so sometimes when we have attraction to it and we say, "Oh, I'm just attracted to God's creation," that's wrong because the Creator doesn't want you to fight that attraction.
Right. Well, I mean, if you were a father and you could, and your child's waiting for something to eat on the table, you could put anything there. So you have to make the choice for them to give them the right thing that's good for them.
Yes, correct. Well, so that's how it is. There are things in the world where God is in them, in order to God. God is in everything. There's things which God created for us to intake, and things which God created, and the way we intake God from that thing, we connect to God through that object, is by rejecting it. Right? There's certain things that like idolatry. Idolatry is also created by God. The way we reveal that God exists through it is by rejecting it. So you might have someone who does idolatry, and he actually, by rejecting it, now he's coming closer to God through the idolatry.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's finish up. This is the last paragraph. This is what it says: death will be swallowed forever. So as long as we don't finish the service of refining the world, and good and evil are mixed in with each other. As we mentioned before, this includes when the Beis Hamikdash existed, even in the lofty time of King Solomon, when the moon was complete. But we said evil was still slightly mixed in with the good. Yes, and that started in the times of Adam. Yesh in Yanamisa, there is death. Bigdei shalayia kiyum lahara. The reason why there's death is we said bad is mixed in everything, and there is death in order that evil should not exist forever, should not live forever. Canal. was Gamatam Shagad and Sadikim Yachsur Lafar and Sha'achas Kedem Tchis Mesim. This is the reason why even righteous people will become earth. So the Jewish tradition, the Agam she'ein rima shalatzes bahem, ba'ad l'shazu she'ken tchis meis ha'gufan kaim meis v'alafim shana, u'mikom makam ken tchis meis miyachzir lafan. We have a tradition that the bodies of righteous people never deteriorate. They're always fresh, like they were alive, even after thousands of years. Right? So, so now the rule is though, even though, so let's say you take Moses or Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, if he would dig up his grave, his body looks like it died yesterday. Now, before Mashiach comes, the tradition is it will deteriorate right before Mashiach comes, and then it will resurrect. So why is that? Why is that? So first of all, does their body not deteriorate? That's because their body is pure. Their body has no sin, right? Only sin has to deteriorate. But they have some sort of slight connection with sin, the fact that they're born from Adam. So therefore, right before Mashiach comes, they will become earth. Because the whole world has a little bit, everything in the world has a little bit of evil mixed in from Adam, even if you live the perfect life. Therefore, the bodies of the tzaddikim, they will need to be cleansed. So here's what we just said. We said that the whole world, even the pure things in the world, have a little bit of evil in them. And therefore they have to die, right? So the evil won't last forever. And even the bodies of righteous people that never deteriorates because it's so pure, nevertheless it has a little bit of evil in it because it's born from Adam. And therefore, right before Mashiach comes, it will have to become earth, become dust, and then it will get up again. On the other hand, in the future, after Mashiach comes, when the spirit of impurity will be removed from the earth, there won't be death. There won't be death, and the body will also get everlasting life. So after Mashiach comes, the bodies will all get up, righteous and non-righteous, and then they will finally live and last forever.
Physical resurrection.
Physical resurrection. After that, the bodies will be totally cleansed. There'll be no more even smell of sin on them, and therefore they'll be able to last forever.
It's just if the body is prepared the right way. If, for example, a Jewish person was...
Well, the body, it has to be prepared the right way in order for it to work out easily, to be more comfortable.
Okay,
it could still happen,
could happen, not, but it's going to be...
But it's not as comfortable. It's not going to be as easy transition. Okay.
Oh, I get it. Wow.
All right, so that is the answer to what we said in the beginning of the mimer, and we explained that basically because there is evil in the world, that is why Adam sinned, and that mixed in evil into the world. That made it that you can't have purity, which lasts forever. Even in the times of King Solomon, when Mashiach comes, evil will finally be swallowed, and that's why death will be swallowed, and everyone will get up and they'll be able to live forever. Okay, so now, V'gam Lahadea. Okay, the Gam Lahadea. This is very interesting now. 1 second. Okay, V'gam Lahadea. Even according to the Pin Damasha Kasov, Ki anar b'mei shana yamais ukpshutai. So there's a verse in Isaiah. The verse says, a child will live till 100 years old. He'll die at 100. What does it mean a child will die at 100? It means that until 100 years old, he'll be like a child. He'll be healthy like a child. So a nar ben me'ashana yamus. That's what Isaiah says. So when Mashiach comes, people will die at 100, but they will be healthy until they die. Now in the Talmud, there's two opinions. One opinion is that's talking about. So one opinion says that is not literally. Another opinion says it's literal. So the Gamla, even according to the opinion, says it's literal. Who rak b'negea b'nei noach. Number one, that's only for Gentiles. So Gentiles, he says, will die at 100, healthily at 100. Masha'inkin Yisrael yeh b'lamam v'snatzach. But Jewish people will live forever. So this is number one. This verse of dying at 100 is not applying to Jewish people. But more than this, even the Gentiles that will die at 100, it's not literal death. Ella nefila. It means they will fall. Because death can mean dying, or it can mean in life you have kind of like you're doing well and then you do bad. You fall from where you're holding. So that's also called death. So Jewish people will no longer have the struggle of falling to get higher. We'll just get closer and closer to God. But Gentiles, when Mashiach comes, they will still have that struggle where they sometimes fall in order to, but they won't actually die. So this is a very interesting interpretation. It's unclear what Isaiah is saying there. The Talmud has a couple opinions, but the Rebbe is saying that even righteous Gentiles, they won't actually die after Mashiach comes.
In this translation, it says, this is the AI, I think.
Yeah.
A child shall die at 100 years old refers only to the son.
Sons of Noach. The Gentiles are called sons of Noach.
Sons of
Yeah.
Noah.
Sons of Abraham versus sons of Noah. Okay, so bad will be so vanquished, Gentiles will have some sort of service, some sort of where they might struggle. Jewish people won't struggle anymore. Gentiles will have some sort of struggle, but the purpose of the struggle, and that struggle will be called death, but that struggle will only be to advance their relationship with God.
Same as us.
Same as us now.
It's us now, yeah.
Yeah.
We're first.
Ukumavur Maimer, as explains in the Maimer of, this is all based on Maimer of the fourth Lubavitcher Rebbe. Through this, that the holy sparks, which will be swallowed, will be holy. Okay. So basically, everything in the world has godly sparks in it, right? Yeah. And those sparks are absorbed in those things. And we do mitzvahs, we release those sparks. So through this, that the holy sparks which were in them will be refined. The bad in them. So okay, so this is basically through them getting closer to God, it'll cause hardship with the separation between their body and their sparks of God, and that's what it means, so to speak, death. That they have to go through this process of refining their body. But on the other hand, Jewish people, Yisala Gamaguf, the body will be totally with the soul. The body will receive from spirituality, just like the soul. Actually, the body will be greater than the soul when Mashiach comes. It'll be greater than the soul. And that's what the verse says in Jeremiah. It says, Nekeva Tosev Gever. It says when Mashiach comes, the woman souls will be actually higher than the male souls, because females represent the body and males represent the soul. And when Mashiach comes, the body will actually be higher than the soul. This should all be literally lower than 10 tfachim. So there's this concept that when God gave the Torah, the Shekhinah came down, but it didn't necessarily permeate the bottom 10 tfachim of the world. That's our job. But when Mashiach comes, the holiness will come through and through in the physical world, even the lowest places. The Gula Mitashlem, with the coming of Mashiach, Aidei Mashiach Tzidkenu, through the coming of Mashiach, B'Karev Mamish.
10 handbreadths.
What? Yeah, what's that?
So 10 handbreadths represent, it says that the Shekhinah, the presence of God, which was revealed at the giving of the Torah, didn't fully come down into the world. That's our job, to bring it in the lowest 10 handbreadths. The lowest 10 handbreadths are considered the lowest part of the world, and so God came down into the world at the Torah, but the lowest 10 handbreadths, we have to bring God there.
Is that connected to what we've been learning about?
It is connected in a metaphysical way, yeah. Now, the Rebbe actually says at the bottom here that even though the Gemara has the story of a rabbi who's digging in his backyard, and he finds a body, a full, complete body. And he says, "What do you do? What are you doing here?" And the body's talking to him. He said, "I'm very righteous. I never deteriorate." He said, "Then come up." And you're talking. He said, "No, I'm dead." He says, "Well, then what are you doing down here?" You look alive. He said, God wants me to be down here. God declared that I'm dead. So the Rebbe actually says that even though it says that, so he says, well, then how are you going to fulfill the verse that says the earth will dance? How are you able to fill that verse? So he says, that will be right before Mashiach comes. My body will deteriorate. So in the bottom here, the Rebbe actually points out that even the deterioration of tzaddikim is not necessarily literally. Just just the fact that they're buried, that's already enough, and they'll get up right before Mashiach comes. So that is the end of this mimer. So just to sum up, this mimer is really about the verse about death. That the verse in Isaiah that says, "Bila hamavis lenetzach," that death will not exist anymore. And we were basing it on a mimer of the fourth Rebbe, who said the reason why there'll be no death, there'll be no more impurity. What is impurity? Impurity is sin. When Adam sinned, he absorbed impurity into himself, and therefore there had to be death in order that the impurities would not live forever. And we said that state of impurities going away never happened in the world, even in the times of King Solomon. And the reason is because God wasn't fully revealed in the times of King Solomon. People still in their heart of hearts had a connection with evil, had a connection with impurity. But now, as we prepare for Mashiach to come, when Mashiach comes, there'll be no more evil, and we have to prepare by harnessing the things that we like in Judaism and doing them purely and going, out of the regular with that. And when we do that, we'll bring the era when Mashiach comes, that death will totally be vanquished, will be totally swallowed, and evil will totally be swallowed, and there'll be no more sin. And then the body will be reborn, totally as purely reborn. That's the end of the mimer.
So, the sin of Abraham,
Sin of Adam.
the sin of Adam, is connected to the giving of the Torah, because without the Torah, we wouldn't know how to serve God, right?